Okay, so we started out this morning talking about our financial legacy. That's what we're headed towards, building of this legacy. But we all own multifamily properties, I venture to guess, for one of three reasons or all three. Cash flow, tax savings, and appreciation. How many of you own multifamily properties for one of those three reasons? Cash flow, tax savings, and appreciation. Sure. If not, then what do you get? Calls in the middle of the night. I just got a call while we were in this room, $2,000 plumbing bill. I mean, right, you guys understand. Now, the market data that we're going to be going through is within both Los Angeles and San Bernardino County. And we break it into 8 individual corridors. And we're not going to be discussing, well, a building's worth this price per unit and so forth. On the tables, there was a postcard laid out when you entered the room. That went out a month and a half, 2 months ago. And we recorded all the videos to say, here's the values in your city. Highest sale, average cap rate, and so forth. You can still click on those QR codes. Those videos come up. What I'm more interested in to discuss right now is the direction of the market. So what we're looking at is total sales volume over the last 10 years. Okay, in dollars, how much multifamily has sold in these specific corridors. Now, how do we group these? East Los Angeles, 90022, 90023, El Sereno, 71091 corridor, Southgate, Bell Gardens, Cudahy, that neck of the woods, Pasadena, South Pasadena, West San Gabriel Valley, Alhambra, Monterey Park, Rosemead, San Gabriel, Temple City, and the surrounding. East San Gabriel Valley, Balma Park, Covina, El Monte, Monrovia, Azusa, that general area. 605 corridor, Montebello, Pico, Norwalk, Whittier. Inland Empire West would be between the 57 and the 15. Pomona, Ontario, Montclair, Claremont, and so forth. And then Inland Empire East would be east of the 15, Fontana, Bloomington, Colton, and so forth. Okay. Each of these slides has 2 charts. The first chart that we have up here is between 2000, the market, real estate market, between 2000 and 2012. And we're trying to identify some patterns because history does repeat itself when it comes to real estate. To see, let's take a look at when that market went from peak to trough. What can that tell us about what we're in the middle of now? East Los Angeles, you can see that total sales volume had peaked going into 2006. Sales began to fall. That's the bar graph. That's sales volume again. The line graph is price per unit. So it kind of bounces around between 04 and 06, finally declines with a bottom being in 2010. Here's 2012 to current. So we see that, of course, coming out of 2010, the low of the market, prices began to escalate. Then we get to about third, fourth quarter of 2019, and that's important, and the market begins to shift. But then, for some odd reason, in 2020, we get this catalyst, and we're going to discuss that. 71091 corridor, same idea. We peak out around 2006. We hit a lull in 2010. And since then, prices were steadily increasing until 2019, and we hit a lull. Things begin to change, but then miraculously, we get a catalyst coming out of 2020. Pasadena, same idea. Here currently, now Pasadena's got an interesting challenge because they've been flirting with their rent control, and that put a lull in the market even earlier. But again, if we look at the previous decade to current, 2019, you saw about middle of 2019, market already had began to correct. And then we have a catalyst in 2020. West San Gabriel Valley, we hit a lull in 2010, and then we get a bounce. Now, in the San Gabriel Valley, one of the interesting things is when in the previous cycle, when the market began to change, the foreign money showed up. My main market that I worked back then was the San Gabriel Valley. Thank goodness. Because while everyone else was going through a correction, we were taking off because all this money came into the marketplace, and they began to, at that time, you would have said overpay for property. They were just looking to invest cash into our market. Very interesting times. You look more current, again, we're in the West San Gabriel Valley. 2017 and 18, between 17 and 18, we hit a lull. We began the drop. We get a catalyst coming out of 2020. The East San Gabriel Valley, same idea. Now, when we get into the 605 corridor, same idea. Are you guys following any trends here? Now, of late in the 605 corridor, you've seen prices actually drop off. I don't know if it's a couple sales that are, black swan type sales. I would say we have about the same market we did in 2021, and we got the same bump, the same catalyst in 2020. So now 2020, did something happen in 2020 that changed all of our lives? Well, sure. And interestingly enough, COVID, aside of making us run out of toilet paper and put on bodysuits, brought the saving grace the market needed. If you were at this event, October of 2019, not only myself, but Bruce Norris, who dives way in the weeds when it comes to all the market data, said the market is shifting. Sales are off, prices are dropping. You talk to a 1031 exchange company. That year I interviewed Greg Burns, who's also in the room with us here today. He's going to be a part of our Q&A panel. We sat down, and it's still up on YouTube. He'll say, yeah, the volume of transactions was dropping coming out of 2019. But in 2020, we get COVID. What did COVID bring with it? A ton of cash, either right or wrong, depending who you ask, low interest rates, and then rental rates took off. As people were told you can work from home, people left West Hollywood, downtown LA, started migrating east for affordability, for more space. Rental rates took off. So 2020, we get low interest rates, we get high rental rates. If you watch my video I recorded at the beginning of the year, you know that in 2021, we saw historically the highest growth we had ever seen in rental rates. And 2022 was poised to be the second year on record with the highest growth and rental rates. So the question then becomes, is the bump that we've seen in multifamily, I would say we didn't see as big of a leap in values as single family did. Now single family is going through a huge correction, but we definitely got to take advantage of the rental rates and the interest rates. Inland Empire, the Inland Empire, though, is different because aside of those two items, it also benefited in the fact that more companies had moved into the Inland Empire. People were moving east. And so as you look at the current growth of that area, both east and west, values have taken off like a hockey stick. 5, 6, 7 years ago, if you were at this event, we were encouraging people, look at the Inland Empire. And it was a little bit foreign, I get it, to people that invest maybe more local here. But if you had done so, like some of my clients, then you have seen that growth and appreciation. And same thing, this is in Inland Empire East. You'll see that from 2020, like a hockey stick. Okay, so that's the market that we're functioning within. Now, revisiting pillar one, maximization, increasing the value from within. We're talking about, as I mentioned this morning, substantial improvements. This is a term you want to learn and love because it's your one way to still vacate units in order to raise your rents to market, and if you do a really good job, to raise your rents well above market. Now, while doing so, if you're going to take back a unit and go through a substantial remodel, which typically is going to consist of, you got to update the electric, the plumbing, they even name those two items in the law. This works in LA County, San Bernardino County, not right now in LA County with the eviction moratorium. But we had done some projects in LA County prior to the moratorium. But nonetheless, this is legal under the law. When we bring up the panel for the Q&A, you can quiz Mike Brennan more about this. But just understand, when we put a project through a substantial improvement, the tenant we have in mind is a millennial. Why? Because there's more of them, number one. Number two, the trend is they typically cohabitate and put off marriage. So 2 incomes. Third, they put off having children. They just get a dog, put a sweater on the dog. And so what does that mean at the end? Is they have more discretionary income to pay you and I higher rents. And they're willing to do so. And I'm going to show you several projects time and time again. It does not fail. They line up at when we go out on Zillow and market our rental units and we're asking 15, 20% above all the other listings, I have a line for 2 hours of people coming to look at our units, LA County and San Bernardino County, and we're going to look at some of this. So again, they're the largest segment. they have the most discretionary income, and they want pride of ownership. They want they want to live in a place that they can bring people to, that they can entertain. Okay. All right. How much growth have we seen in rental rates? Well, if you look at 2020, there was a growth of about 22%, 2021, on top of that, another 10. This year, I got to imagine it's probably been at least 5 to 7. So this is important because this is what's available, right? This is what we have to keep in mind is, I would venture to guess for many of you, rental rates are much higher than what you assume they are. Now, going back to 2019 and this idea of substantial improvement, just as we're going through the bill, the rent control bill, AB 1482, and I'm in conversation and counsel with Mike Brennan, Mike says, Chris, you didn't read it right. Because I thought the bill said, if you're going to do these improvements, you must pull permit. He said, reread the sentence to me. You're going to do projects that would cause you to pull permit. Cause would, not must. Oh, we don't have to pull permit. Okay, so that eliminates some of the rigmarole with the city and, you know, a contractor, no contractor. And on top of that, it was important that before I encourage landlords to, hey, go out and take on these projects, before we know what's going to happen, how do the courts deal with it and what have you, Chris put his money where his mouth is. So this is, I'm going to take you to a video clip of our event, 2019. Rent control is just rolling out. And I say, hey, let's go try this for real. At the moment when we're facing rent control, and you have tenants that are maybe paying 20, 30% below market rate, it's a consideration to do some of these capital improvements so that you can then vacate those units and obtain market rent. This is a 5-unit property, and the tenants, if you can believe it or not, were paying $750 and $800 per unit. The woman who sold the building actually built the building with her husband, and they had owned it since the 1960s, and apparently never raised rent. $750. Even if I would have worked something out with them to say, hey, let's agree on $1,100. Market is $16. Let's agree at $1,100, which is what I would have done. It becomes law. Now my rents would have went back to $750. Can you imagine raising rents 7% on $750 once per year for the coming years? Makes no financial sense. So the government forced my hand. I gave everyone a 60-day notice to vacate. All tenants. 4 of the 5 will be out come this Monday, and we're going to start our construction. And we'll do the same type of rehab that we've done. So let's take a look at that project. So this is the 5-unit property in Ontario. Interestingly enough, it was listed by another agent. The day that my partner Deepan and I, because we bought this together, but the day we show up for the inspection, some landlords that have attended my events in the past, they were there also to inspect the same property. We ended up winning, though. We know how to negotiate. This is before, this is after. We were done. We completely remodeled the property. Now, if you remember in the video, I said that market rental rates were $1,600. For those units, we eventually collected $1,850 to $1,900, 15%. More importantly, though, put the slide back up, please, is that property we sold for $280,000 per unit. That's still the highest price per unit any building has sold in Ontario of that age, vintage, and style till this day. So not only do you get the immediate growth when you go through these substantial improvement projects of cash flow today, Pillar 1, you get the growth of the property value. Many landlords are just letting equity go by the wayside because you use your properties as charity, and I'm not making that a negative thing here, but as opposed to raising the rental rates. Let's look at another project here. This was in Covina. Now, I bought this building March of 2020. Actually, Chuck can vouch for me. Chuck, this is the building you went to go meet the tub guy. But that's before. Apparently, an owner thought that was a great looking building. That's after. Now, this is March of 2020. I closed escrow. Anything else happened March of 2020? So then I'm trying to vacate units. I'm trying to hire tradesmen when nobody wants to work. I'm trying to go to Home Depot and compete with all the dads that are at home and they have the honey-do list, and now they're renovating everything and I can't get supplies and breakers and just stuff that was easily available before. We got through all 8 units. I still own that building. 2 important key points here. Number 1, I rent those units now for $1,750, 500 square foot ones in Covina. So those of you who know the rental rates know that's a very high rent. Number 2, I refinanced that property last year, and because of the building's condition, I'm the one who met the appraiser. The appraiser said, you know what, we can't use no comps in Covina. There's no product like this. I can't use anything. He used comps from Glendale, Pasadena, way far out, that increased the value. I got every dime that I had in that building, my purchase money, my rehab money out. And we did that within a year's time. Unheard of, but that's what is possible in terms of the substantial renovations. Now let's talk about today. This is a building that I'm currently renovating now, my partner Deepan and I. This is what the units look like. 7 units, 2 bedroom, 1 bath. We gave the tenants a 60-day notice. Now this went a little sideways. Some of them said they thought they were going to fight us, and we said, sure, I have Mike Brennan. And with Mike's help, all but one has agreed to now leave. We've already completed 2 of the units. That's what they look like, the finished product. 2 bedroom, 1 bath unit, City of Ontario. We now collect $2,250 to $2,300 to $2,350. 2 bedroom units. That's what's possible. Now let's talk about some of these rental rates. 605 corridor. Now this is a chart, right? How rents have run, and I realize that looks a little grainy. There you go. Okay. We have 3 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 1 bedrooms, and studios. But what's the point here that I'm trying to ring home? Raise your rents. You could raise your rents right now 10%, 5% plus the gross and CPI. Actually, it would be more than 10, but they put a ceiling of 10, so it's 10. I imagine we're also going to get 10% this coming year, right? Because it's April to April. Raise your rents again. Many of you, your rents are well below market. Well below market. Why do we want to do that? So we can head to pillar 2. Regardless if we're one of those 3 investors that I mentioned this morning, you're currently retired, still working, pondering what to do for the heirs, growth is key. Growth is key because the economist of scale is going to win with all the trouble that's within the market in terms of politics and what have you. Now, when we talk about growth, of course, we're talking about either a cash out refinance, 1031 exchange. I've done both. So what's possible? My client owned this 10-unit building in the city of Montebello. Now, when I came into their life, this is where they were. Because they don't know me from anyone. I'm just the guy on YouTube. Okay. They said, Chris, this sounds all great, but you don't understand. There's no tenants like our tenants. Even though these tenants were on the welfare plan to pay rent. Some on the 1st, some on the 5th, and some on the 10th. Some of you know how that goes. Even though they paid that way, they still believe that every other building had tenants worse than theirs. They also thought, well, everyone else is a slumlord, so if I go to buy another building, I'm just going to buy somebody else's problem. Third, well, because they had bought 2 decades prior, buildings free and clear, how can we go from no loan to a loan and increase our cash flow? Better yet, our basis is so low, how can we do a 1031 exchange, pay the increased property tax, and our cash flow is still going to be more? All valid questions. And I said, look, they're tied up in the emotion of the property. I have the liberty of looking from the outside in, and I said, let's just look at the math. They ended up selling, doing a 1031 exchange, buying the 17-unit building in Baldwin Park. That's a 70% increase in terms of the number of units owned. That is key, because tell me, had they held on to 10 units, how long would it have taken to raise 17 rents on a 10-unit building? Go ahead, I'll give you time. So by adding the additional 7 doors, and especially in rent control that didn't exist then, and you raise rent every year, year after year on those 7 additional units, that 17 unit will dwarf anything that the 10 unit can provide. Immediately, they saw a 31% upside in net cash flow. Just day one, not even raising rents. Their net cash flow after the new taxes taken on the mortgage, repairs and maintenance and what have you, 31%. Okay, just so you know that that's not the leprechaun riding the unicorn story. Here's another one. My client during COVID, and this is on YouTube, had refinanced these 2 4-unit properties prior to COVID because he had a partner who passed, and so he wanted to buy out the heirs from those buildings. So he refied these 2 properties to be able to buy out those remaining properties. And he was negative cash flow, $21,000. He calls me during COVID and says, Chris, I want to do a 1031 exchange. I said, you picked an interesting time. We're going to go risk our health to go do some property investigations. And he says, well, I don't want to just do any 1031 exchange. You need to find me a building in the city of Covina in this 3-block radius, because he owned a pharmacy previously in Covina. I said, okay, any other, what color do you want the building, right? So we end up finding this 12-unit property off market what does he do? He goes from 8 to 12 units. That's a 50% increase in number of units owned. Goes from negative 21,400 to a positive 22,364. Gil actually did the loan for that property now that I think about it. And the end result was an increase of 204,000 on his money. Next client owns 5 units in Bell, 5 units in Bell Gardens. Well, Chris, can you sell 2 buildings, bring the money together and do a 1031 exchange? Yes, you can. We sell these 2 10-unit buildings. We buy an 18-unit building in Montebello, and this building was poised at the close of escrow to do one of these substantial improvement projects. I said, this is it. If you do X, Y, Z, here's the growth we're going to see. Their income after substantial renovation would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $157,000. That's a 64% increase in net cash flow and an 80% increase in total number of units owned. Again, they went from 10 to 18. The reason why the number of units is also key, in addition, of course, to the cash flow, is because of the compound effect. And I want you to think about it this way. Let's say you had $500,000. We can either invest it in a 6-unit or we can invest it in a 10-unit. We buy the 6-unit. We then begin to increase rents by $50 per unit. The income now has gone up $3,600. We value that property based upon 13 GRM. Okay. And some of you might laugh at 13 GRM. You should see some buildings I've seen lately. It's coming. If you value it, let me go back. If you value it on 13 times gross, the value went up $43,000 by raising the rents $50 per unit. Everyone follow? Okay. 10 units now, 10-unit property. We take our $500,000, we go buy the 10-unit instead. $50 per month, we increase the same amount. Okay, keep things fair in the comparison here. We now increased our income by $6,000. We've now increased the value of our money by $78,000. It's simple math. The compound effect of owning more units year after year as you raise rents, especially in light of rent control. Remember, it's very predictable that they're going to change how much we can raise rents over time. So we need to leverage size. Now, it's a tradition here at the luncheon that I always go out in the crowd, pick someone that didn't know I was going to talk to them and quiz them a little bit about what they've been through. So, Mr. Guillermo Ramirez, I have chosen you today. I'm coming. Someone can bring me a mic. I saw. There he is. I'm coming, Guillermo. All right. Is your hair look good? Or are you going to be on camera? All right. Everyone give him, please, a round of applause for Mr. Ramirez. And this is not a setup, but I do it this way on purpose to take him off guard so how he answers comes off the cuff. Okay. I'll set the scenario and then you just tell us what you've experienced. You owned the gas station in El Monte. You also owned an 8-unit and a 4-unit at that time when we meet, if I remember correctly. Lambert and I forget now. Yeah, Lower Azusa, there you go. Okay. I come into your gas station and I say, Mr. Ramirez, I have all these grand ideas. You say, Chris, you don't understand. As it is, we're taking money from the gas station to supplement the apartments because the management wasn't doing a great job at the time. We've done several exchanges since then. Now you own close to 45 units. Let's pick it up there. What's been your perception of the process, this growth, the positive, the negatives of the exchange, and where you sit today? Maybe just share a little bit with us.
Well, can I just simplify?
Sure.
Well, you just changed my financial view of what I was doing then and my position that I'm in today. I do feel that you really changed my family's legacy, and just from not making any money and having a lot of headaches to having a very relaxing life and having a great result for your health and all the things that you've done for us. Very simple. It's changed our life.
Thank you, sir. Let's give it up for Mr. Ramirez. Thank you, your guest.
Okay.
I do that because, as you can imagine, we share the vision with many, many landlords. Of course, not everyone signs up and says yes. And unfortunately, many, out of complacency, fear, and understandable, they stay pat. Let's move on to the third pillar, prepare for tomorrow. Now, when we're looking at preparing for tomorrow, we're primarily concerned with one of two options. how do I exit completely yet mitigate as much capital gains tax exposure as I can? And or maybe I'm not ready to exit fully, but I still want to enjoy monthly cash flow. I enjoy that about real estate. I just don't want everything else, the phone calls, the maintenance expense, and the headaches and so forth. So when we're in this phase, there's two prevalent options. The first would be a DST. I won't spend a lot of time on the DST. We have an hour-long video on our YouTube channel where I interviewed the president of JR Wealth in Pasadena, DST company, and we outlined the A to Z's in terms of what is a DST, how do they function, and so forth. But to put it together very quickly, in a DST, as opposed to buying a triple net property, selling out an apartment building and going and buying a Starbucks, or going and buying one CVS, or going and buying $1 General and putting all your eggs in one basket, in a DST, you're actually buying a basket of properties. With JR Wealth, it ends up being like 10 to 12 properties that you own a little bit of each one. And of course, you own alongside other investors as well. That's what the DST is responsible for coordinating the purchase and so forth, the management. So there's no management on your side. But what do you gain in return? Monthly cash flow, the growth and appreciation, the tax savings from depreciation, yet none of the headaches. So I would point you to our YouTube channel so that you can see for yourself what that's about. If, though, we're looking for a different option, the second most prevalent, or I would actually, no, more prevalent, would be to sell and to carry back financing. For those of you who are on our email list, you've seen that I've already sold maybe 2-3 buildings this year where the investors sold, and they carried back financing because what did that do for them as the seller? Number one, they've sold. No more headaches, no more calls. Number two, it still leaves in place cash flow for them on a monthly basis based upon the note that they're going to carry. And number three, they, over the course of time, let's say they carry a note for 5 years. If you look at the net after 5 years or 10 years, however long they carry this note, they earn more money in total as opposed to if they were just to sell today. So, for example, I have a client here. You actually bought a building that I was seller financing right here, right in the front earlier, just about a month ago or so. Yes. Okay. So here's a scenario. We had a client, 5 units in Ontario. Their family actually built the property, a lot of sentimental ties, but they were ready to retire. Had they just sold and cashed out, they would have netted $1,075,000. We said, well, let me go back. If we give you $1,075,000, do you know what you're going to do with it right now? They said, no. We would just put it in the bank. I said, well, do you need it all right now for any particular reason? No. Then why not carry financing for a period of time and earn interest on the note carried? So in this case, the buyer put 25% down, $287,500. The loan amount that they took back was $86,250. Their income was from the note $39,675. The interest rate was 4.6% that they chose to carry at. At the time, interest rates were about 3.5%. So just to give you some idea, obviously this is prior to the recent run-up in interest rates. So what does it look like at the end of the day? Well, I said that they could have either taken $1,075,000 and cashed out, or carry for 5 years. And actually, over the course of 5 years, they made or will have made $1,348,375. So you earn more money over the life of the loan. And so this is a consideration if you don't need all the money today. After listening to Brennan and all he had to share, but you're ready to exit today and you want to take advantage of continuing cash flow. I hope real quick, a lot of strategy built in there. I hope that helps. Now let's take a look forward. Well, I mentioned that there was this catalyst in 2020. We get low interest rates, we get growing rental rates. Historic rental rate growth in 2020, 2021, 2022. How many of you think that rents will continue to climb from where they are today? By a raise of hands, you think they will go up? We just reported the first decline in rental rates last month. Slight decline, but for the first time in 3 years, we saw a pullback. Could it be that tenants like you and I that are battling with inflation and what have you, it's now a struggle? You read all the statistics, they're choosing not to renew long-term leases in some of these newer constructed buildings. That's what the data tells us. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just telling you this is the facts. Well, why could that be? Well, if you look at Los Angeles, San Diego, Riverside, these are the top 10 most expensive communities to live in the nation, and how much rents have grown. Obviously, we're at the top of the list. So this is something to watch. What happens to interest rates going forward? If the two saving graces to the market, and the only reason we got a catalyst was interest rates and rental rates, and we're going to lose rental rates, what then about interest rates? Well, they've already gone up. The interest rate today, the average interest rate, if you want to purchase a multifamily property, is 5.25% to 5.5%. It was just a few months ago that we were less than 4%, and here we are. You have to ask yourself, do you think interest rates will continue to climb? Why is that so important? Well, let's take a look here. I'm using $1 million property, 40% down payment, $400,000, income of $72,000, so that gives us a 4.2 cap rate, which I'm sure we can agree that's about an average deal. At an interest rate of 4.5%, gives us a cash flow of $55.19. This is our baseline example. Let's now raise the rate from 4.5% to 5%. Same building, same income, same expenses. We simply raised the rate 0.5%. What just happened? The income went from $55.19 to $33.49. That's 39% less net cash flow for a buyer. Raise it another 0.5%, from 5 to 5.5. You go from $33.49 to $11.19. That's an 80% reduction in net cash flow, and we've only got up 1 point. Well, this is the interest rate that we sit at today. So if you had evaluations done, appraisals done last year, it's a new market. Last year, they would have been quoting you 4.25. We're sitting at 5.5. Take the rate to 6%. The cash flow now goes negative from $55.19 to $11.68. It's now the buyer has lost or is negative 121% cash flow versus where they would have been with the current rates. Well, then in turn, what could that possibly do to values? Let's take the same scenario. $1 million building, same income, what have you. We're focusing on the cash flow, $55.19. At some point, buyers are going to say, enough is enough. I'm not going to put 80% down on a building. The price needs to adjust in order to meet my cash flow. Let's take the rate from 4.5 to 5. You see the cash flow stayed the same, $55.19. What didn't stay the same? The price. Go left. It dropped from $1 million to $957 in order to get us the same cash flow. Our price just went down $42,000. Raise the rate another 0.5 point. Go left. The price just dropped from $1 million to $916,800. That's an $83,200 difference in price. Take it another 0.5 point. Our building, which was once worth $1 million, is now worth $878,800. Based upon what am I basing this on? The fact that if buyers say, if I'm going to deal with rent control that's only tightening, and all the reasons why you're selling, I'm now taking that on. But in return for my risk, I want a certain reward. That's how much of a difference that we could see in values. Again, I'm not suggesting the market's going to see a big shift. I'm not an economist. But I want you to put 2 and 2 together. We looked at the data. 2019, the market was already shifting. It was time. It was a decade. Then we get this anomaly of COVID. It brings into the marketplace a ton of cash and rising interest rates. But the market was set to correct. The point is, if we've lost interest rates and if we lose rental rates, what else will hold the market up at the values that we've seen of late? What else can we point to? And who knows? Maybe buyers will be so desperate given inflation. And speaking of inflation, I have to apologize. We had to make the coffee cup smaller this year because of Biden's quote-unquote transitory inflation. This is the new size of your coffee cup. So I apologize for that. But I posed that the purpose here in this room is let's talk it out, let's talk together, and let's put our minds together to say, what can the market data tell us? Now, unfortunately, the gentleman who could really dive down into the analytics is not here today, Mr. Bruce Norris. As you know, those of you who know him, he lives in Florida. He couldn't make it because of the hurricane. Bruce is fine. His home, his real estate there went untouched. Thank God. What Bruce has agreed to do, given his absence, is that for only those of you in the room today, we're going to have a Zoom live session with him in about a week or two once Bruce had to leave and go to Georgia. Now he's back in Florida. But anyways, give him time to settle. We're going to be sending out the invite to this Zoom session via email. And that'll be your chance. Number one, he's going to go through all the data. He just presented his last workup called Uncharted Territory. And that's it. He's retiring. I partook in that. It cost me $500 to attend his event. Just because we're associated, I don't say, hey, you got to give it to me for free. And it's very interesting why he calls this Uncharted Territory. I don't want to give away the plot here. But I want you to hear it for yourself. And then we're going to open it for questions. If you have questions about the market, if you have questions about investing out of state, remember, Bruce sold everything he had in California, self-made in California, because he saw the trend coming, is now fully vested in Florida. If you have questions about, hey, why Florida? How do you invest out of state successfully and all the rest? This Zoom interview is going to be for you, so keep posted for that. Financial legacy. That's what we're focused on. Now, this is my financial legacy. Okay, let's get it out. I do know what causes it. I do have more than one TV. How many of you would be excited to rent your 2-bedroom to that? I don't know. I don't know if that meets the... Now, you really won't like me if I told you that my wife is actually pregnant with our 9th child due November. Right? Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Needless to say, there's going to be many educational lunches to come. So, but here's the point. You have your own financial goals. I have my financial goals. Even amidst all the challenges of the marketplace, of the politics, at least for me, I have no choice. Mariah, who's there on the left, this is her first year of college. My next oldest daughter, who's standing next to my wife, she goes to college the year after. John Paul goes to college 2 years after that. Right? I had to figure this thing out. And so the point is to work within the constraints of the market. What strategies are working today? What pillar am I in? Maximization, growth, preparing for tomorrow, focus, get to work, maybe make the hard decisions we have to, but nonetheless make those decisions. And with that, I'm going to be bringing up Mr. Steven Spirit.